Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Amriteshwaryai Namaha. Om Amriteshwaryai Namaha. Om Amriteshwaryai Namaha. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashaadhyayinim Amba Tvam Anusandadami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravinda Yatapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purna Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipa Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapane Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogda Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsya Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Nateshwaraya Namaha. Good evening, everybody. We're back on the Kurukshetra. We're back. Time warp, 5,200 years back, and we're with Krishna and Arjuna again. We have to readjust our minds to be back and visualize the scene and get the feeling of what it's like to be there. So, also want us to remember what we discussed are the main purposes of chapter 1, because we had pointed out, and people are going to remember this by heart pretty soon. The real teaching starts from chapter 2, verse 11. There's no teaching of like guru-disciple teaching before that. So the question can always be, why is there a first chapter in the first place? Why not just start from 2:11? But we gave two reasons in a general sense why there is a chapter 1, and these are the two purposes of chapter 1. Anybody, without looking at their notes, anybody can remember what those were? One was the introduction of a problem, because Bhagavad Gita is a solution to a problem. Just like Amma, her teachings are a solution to a problem that we have. We know we have problems, but what Amma and what Krishna would say is that, no, you don't know the real problem. You know superficial problems, you don't know what the real problem is. So it introduces us to the real problem, which is, and there's one guy who always tells us the answer, what was it, Shane? Ignorance. What do we call it in Sanskritam, or the same word in Malayalam? Huh? Ajnanam, ignorance. Now, you can say ignorance is in many ways, I didn't read the newspaper this morning, I'm ignorant of the news. That's one ignorance. But ignorance of worldly things can or cannot create misery. Doesn't necessarily create misery. Amma has said, I don't know anything about English. She says, those of you who know English, you guys deal with English. I don't know English. So you could say she's proclaiming her ignorance about English, but she doesn't suffer. We suffer, and we have lots of worldly knowledge. So ignorance or knowledge of worldly things is neither a cause for joy or sorrow. So the ignorance we're talking about here is a much deeper, a spiritual ignorance. So coming to terms with that problem that not only Arjuna has, but all of us suffer from, is one of the purposes of chapter 1. What was the other purpose or goal, theme of chapter 1? We talked about it.
She wrote, Radha wrote, the guru-disciple relationship.
Very good. So, introduction of the guru and introduction of the disciple. When when there's like a drama is about to take place, the different characters get introduced through something in the first act, the different relationships between the people, and then the drama starts taking place. So this is what we have. We have the main characters are Krishna and Arjuna, although so many other characters were introduced last week, all kinds of names we can't even pronounce. It doesn't matter, they don't come up anymore in the Bhagavad Gita. You can quickly forget those names unless you're going to read Mahabharata and follow the story, which is also fascinating. So introduction of the guru and disciple, and it is not just any old guru and disciple, it is a fit guru and a fit disciple. So we discussed that last week. I won't go into that again. So we read up to verse 19, and we're going to, of course, resume from 20. But before we plunge back into 20, I just want to remind you all that, excuse me. Okay. I think you have to keep it away from the speaker. Yeah. Just turn it off. We don't need it in here right now. Okay. Where we left off, Arjuna was still of sound mind and sound intellect. He was still very much identified with his warrior persona, and as such, he was still not Krishna's disciple, which means if Krishna is not a guru, if there's no disciple, he can't be a guru, he can't give any teaching, right? For to give a teaching, there should be a disciple, right? So there's no disciple, so he's just doing something else. What is he doing? What's his role he's playing right now? Huh? He's a charioteer, he's a driver, he's the chauffeur. He's just a chauffeur because that's all anybody asked for. So it's kind of can you imagine Amma being our chauffeur? It's pretty ridiculous notion, but this is what's happening right now. And just all because Arjuna is very much identified with, I'm in control. I'm going to, start this war and win this war. So first, in order for Krishna to become the guru, Arjuna has to become the disciple. In order for Arjuna to become the disciple, he has to surrender to Krishna. Right now, he has no intention to surrender. He's not at all interested in surrendering. He is totally identified with being the warrior and starting the war and killing all these people that he's been, so angry at for so long. So he hasn't realized that he has this problem that we just talked about, ignorance. So we're very far from him becoming a disciple right now. Unfortunately, this is the same situation that we're in with Amma in many ways. We haven't completely surrendered. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom and become totally desperate and fall at Amma's feet and say, look, please save me, Only then can she really pour her wisdom into us. So I think we might have to admit that we're still in the same thing with Arjuna. We think that we've got everything under control. I know what I'm doing. When I need help, I'll ask Amma. So that's where Arjuna is too. Now remember, we talked about how many chariots and elephants and horses were there. So it's a huge assembly of warriors on this battlefield. So I'm trying to get you to all visualize this. And remember that this is it is said to be about 5,200 years ago. So that means the population of the country was also very small to begin with. Not like today. India is the second most populous country in the world. Maybe then too, but that didn't mean what it means today. So it is estimated that the world population at that time was between 15 million and 50 million. And we already said that there were something like, 4 million people on the battlefield between the two. I can't remember how many it was. So it's about 10% to 20% of the world population is there on that battlefield, all in one place. So it's a huge war that's about to take place, and it's such that tension is rising, and they're all blowing their horns and yelling battle cries and screaming at the top of their lungs. And the Kauravas already declared war. They blew their conches, and Bhishma let out a big battle cry. So they have started the war. Now the question is, what are the Pandavas going to do? And even though, everybody is basically looking at Arjuna because he's the hero. So they're looking at Arjuna, what's this guy going to do? What's he going to do? Let's find out. So we're going to do what we did last time. We're going to read the Sanskrit together, and then, I don't remember where we left off, try to figure out where we left off, and we'll have someone read the English. Atha vyavasthitan drishtva dhartarashtran kapidvajah pravritte shastra sampade dhanurudyamya pandavaha. Okay, where are we with the English?
Then, seeing the sons of Dhritarashtra drawn up in battle order, as missiles were about to fly, the son of Pandu, Arjuna, whose banner bore the image of Hanuman, took up his bow.
Okay. Okay, now let's learn how to read scriptures a little bit here. What does this tell you? Missiles are about to fly, the tension is mounting, right? And Arjuna, as the banner of Hanuman, okay, that last thing, took up his bow. What does that tell you? What does it tell you about his mental state? He's ready to fight. He's not planning on a tea party or anything like that. He's ready to fight. So, anybody remember from some talks that I've given before, I mentioned the meaning, contextual meaning of this word atha. In other scriptures, it usually comes at the beginning. The whole, like Yoga Sutras, it comes at the beginning of the whole scripture, atha. But here, it doesn't have that meaning, but it still means the same thing we have here in English, then. So then he's creating a turning point, or he's creating a shift in the scenario. Vyasa is through Sanjaya. He's saying then. So there's something that, back in the old days, it's literature. That's all they can do is do something that suddenly or then. This is how you do it in literature, right? So they're trying to catch your attention. Something's about to happen, so pay attention is what they're saying. And Arjuna is obviously ready. He's impatient. He's been waiting for this war. He picks up his bow. Both sides are ready to fight. Only thing left to do is to start shooting arrows. What we're going to find is in the next verse, something happens. We're going to read that. There's a shift that takes place in Arjuna's mind. Before we go on to the next verse though, I want to share something with you that's a humorous aside. Doesn't come in Mahabharata. It comes, I can't remember which scripture it comes in or where I got this story, but it was related to me when I was studying the Bhagavad Gita about Hanuman. So Kapi Dwajaha means the flag of Hanuman. So Arjuna's flag is Hanuman, and it said that throughout the war, Hanuman was there. Because Ramayana comes before Mahabharata. Ramayana is much older. So Hanuman was there on the battlefield. And it said that he came there just to like watch everything, you know. He wasn't just on the flag of Arjuna's chariot, he was there, you know, maybe in subtle form watching. But he said it, you know, for Hanuman it was a really boring war, it seems. He just said, this is nothing, you know. What are you guys, you call this a war? You know. So he said that he slept the whole time. He only woke up just to see Bhishma fight. Ah, that's a pretty good fight. Yeah, okay. Went back to sleep. And then after that war was over, Bhima asked Hanuman, how did you like the war? And he says, it was nothing compared to what I've seen before. You know, especially the fight between Rama and Ravana. Oh, you should have seen that. This was his comment about the whole Mahabharata war. When you read Mahabharata, that sounds like a pretty gruesome battle, but for Hanuman it was nothing. So, let's continue. So verse 21. Rishikesham tada vakyam idam aha mahipate. Now the speaker switches, so we say Arjuna uvacha senayoruphayor madhye ratham stapaya mechuta. We'll continue on to verse 22. Yavadetan niriksheham yodhu kamanavastithan kairmaya sahayodhavyam asmin ranasamudyame. Okay, Hema. Verse 22, the English, please. Sit down.
Then Arjuna said, O Lord of Earth, Rishikesh, Lord of Krishna, draw my chariot between the two armies, O Achyuta.
Yeah, sorry, that was 21. 22, please, also, Vijay.
So that I may observe those who stand here, eager for battle, and know with whom I should fight in the style of war.
Okay. So he decides, he could have just started shooting arrows, but he didn't, right? So something happened, we don't know. That's kind of beside the point. But he decides that he wants to see all these people in the opposing army. And probably knowing Arjuna, the idea was that, okay, I'm just about to kill all these people. Because he had no fear. In fact, you may have heard that there's such a thing as I think it's the 10 names of Arjuna, or 12 names of Arjuna, or something like that. And it is said that when you lose your confidence, when you lose your courage, you're supposed to chant those 10 names of Arjuna and you'll become courageous again. So he was known as such a courageous person that, he's fought Shiva. What are these guys? They're nothing, compared to Lord Shiva. So he's about to start, it's just, okay, I'm going to kill these guys. Let me just take a look and see who I'm going to kill. He's not thought, okay, they might kill me. Never any such a thought. He was so courageous. Maybe he thought, okay, let me say goodbye to them, because they're going to be dead in a few minutes. But whatever that reason was, it was a very important flash that took place in his mind, because without that flash that took place in his mind, he wouldn't have had this, what we're going to read about, this sudden change of heart. And if he didn't have the sudden change of heart, we wouldn't have had the Bhagavad Gita. And then if there were no Bhagavad Gita, we wouldn't be here tonight, right? So anyhow, we would be studying something else. So again, Arjuna is still the master and Lord Krishna is the servant. He's saying, pull my chariot up there and drive over there, It's like, can you imagine? So it's like he's calling him Lord of Earth in one breath, and next breath, move my chariot over there. So just think, when you're the charioteer when you're the driver of the chariot, that means you got to take care of the chariot, you got to take care of the horses. You go back to the stable after the war. Who watches? Arjuna's not going to scrub the horses and shovel the, maybe he had Krishna doing that. You never know. It's a pretty frightening notion. We have to make sure that we don't fall in that same path. So he's identified with the chariot. He's calling it my chariot. He could at least say our chariot, right? Pull up our chariot. No, it's my chariot. And so there's this feeling of ego and ownership, I and mine, right? And you know what Amma says, when you have an I and mine associated with something, that means all the suffering that comes from that, you have taken possession of it also. So when you say this is my body, that's fine, but that means any suffering that comes to the body, it's your fault, it's your problem, basically. When you say, Amma, this is your body, any suffering that comes, Amma, what are you going to do about the suffering that's happening to this body? Because it's your body. Are you going to do anything? I don't mind, but I can't use it for you. So that's a different approach. I mean, instead of saying, Krishna, this is your chariot, shall we go forward? It's my chariot. So this is an analogy for our lives also. The chariot, like we said, is the body and our life. So our whole life, if we think of it as mine, like what happens to Arjuna, same thing is going to happen to us. All the suffering that comes is going to be ours. So we have to decide whether we call it mine or at least ours, between us and Amma, shared with Amma. So we know that he'd been waiting for this battle for so long, because the Pandavas had been unjustly bullied by the Kauravas from the beginning. So we have to keep that in mind. So he was just waiting for this day, and he's probably seething with anger also. Now, let us continue on. Verse 23. Yotsyamanān aveksheham ya etetra samagataha dhartarashtrasya durbuddhir yuddhe priya chikirshavaha. Okay.
Let me look on those who are assembled here ready to fight, eager to accomplish in battle what is dear to the evil-minded.
The evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra, next line, comes on the next page. The evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra means whom? Who's that? Huh? Duryodhana, right. So in other words, it is true, all these people are there, they're affiliated with Duryodhana, even though maybe some of them, or a good number of them, are there due to their allegiance to Bhishma, but still they're fighting for Duryodhana. He's the prince at the time. So from Arjuna's evaluation, a very key word here is durbuddhehe. Durbuddhehe means evil-minded, or one of like a warped intellect or something like that, right? So, because buddhi means intellect also. Sometimes it's used to mean mind, in the Gita it's used to mean different things. But here it's pretty obvious, it's not in a real philosophical sense that he's using it. So when he says evil-minded, that means he understands that all these people who are on the enemy army and enemy side, they're all affiliated with an evil purpose. He's very clear about that at this point, right? So it's not a family feud or a tribal skirmish or anything like that. He's very clear at this point still that it is a question of dharma versus adharma, or righteousness versus unrighteousness. So up to this point, it's still his proper judgment is intact. And he's able to transcend whatever, relationships he has with the people emotionally. It's important to remember that even though Vedanta and Bhagavad Gita and Amma talk about emotions as potentially being obstacles to us on the spiritual path, we should never interpret it to be that emotions are bad. Gita doesn't say that, Amma doesn't say emotions are bad. And it's okay to have emotional, we have emotional relationships with different people, like Arjuna has with all these other people on the enemy side. That, it never talks about that. What it says is, what we're going to see is how that attachment starts to cloud his judgment. When the emotional attachment to these people clouds his judgment, then he makes a wrong decision. And then he starts to see good as bad and bad as good. So for someone who's a prince and potentially a ruler of a country, it's a very dangerous situation to be in. Because when the prince or the king is confused, or the queen, the whole country is going to suffer. So it's a very key point here. And also, before we go into this whole discussion that's going to follow, we have to remember that for a prince, the definition of non-injury, or what we call ahimsa in Sanskrit, or non-violence, is very important, because normally we don't stick knives in people and things like that. And normally a doctor won't just randomly cut people. But there are cases where the doctor, as part of his dharma, has to cut people, right? How many people have had an actual surgery where you had a knife, right, inserted, right? So you asked for it, right? You went there and you said, I want you to do this. And so the doctor is doing his duty or her duty. So it's only because there's a reason and they need to do it. It's to save your life, or it's for a higher purpose. So that doesn't mean that doctors can never inflict harm on the human beings. It's a small himsa for the sake of a bigger purpose. So we say peacekeeping forces, but they all have guns, right? And they sometimes have to shoot people, but they're peacekeepers. It's not a war for military, action and things like that, but there are cases where, for the sake of a larger peace, you have to engage in some kind of physical force. And Arjuna knew that at this point, but he gets confused later. And also, it's important to point out that it was still clear to him at this point that they had exhausted all of their options. If you read the story, you know that they have exhausted every option that was possible. There's a series of actions that you're supposed to use before you resort to force. Anybody know what those are? Force is the last of 4 steps you're supposed to use. Anybody know? We rarely use this, so we're going to use it today. Yeah, exactly.
People from the Dallas wrote the same thing.
You can type it in there. You can type it in there for them.
No, they wrote it already. People from the Dallas, they...
Oh, okay. So, first one is sama. Sama means, you try to get along with them. You're conciliatory. You give in, so you compromise a couple of things. You're very nice and friendly. Dana is typically would mean like you're giving a gift. So you give actually a gift of some kind. Perhaps you give some money, or you give a piece of land, or concede something. Not just verbally, but you actually give a gift of some kind. They used to give cows and rice and things like that, right? Bheda is a little more devious. This is where we get into the realm of Machiavelli and Shunzu and all the ancient art of war and things like that. It's divide and conquer, So let's say the first two fail, then you say, okay, like let's say the mother says, if you do your homework, I'll give you ice cream. But he doesn't do his homework. And then you say, okay, if you don't do your homework, I'm going to give ice cream to your little brother. Then he says, okay, I'll do my homework, right? Because anything he doesn't want, or your worst enemy, whatever it is, don't give it to that person. I'll do my homework. That's bheda. So you don't want something good to go to somebody else. So it's a bit of a lower level of reasoning, but sometimes it works. They did all these things. The Pandavas, with Krishna's guidance, tried everything. Nothing worked. So the only thing left was danda. Danda means the stick or the cane, beating like that. So he understood. But now we're going to see how his emotions and his attachment overpowered his judgment, his discernment. And from there, the samsara begins, and from there, the Gita begins. So we're going to go on to verse 24. Sanjaya uvacha eva mukto rishikesho gudakeshena bharata senayorubhayor madhye stapayitva rathottamam.
Sanjaya said, O Bharata, thus invoked by Gudakesha, Arjuna, Rishikesha, Lord Krishna, having drawn up the magnificent chariot between the two armies.
Okay. Sorry, and then we're going to read verse 25 also, excuse me. Bhishma Drona Pramukhataha Sarvesham Chamahikshitam Uvacha Partapashaitan Samavetan Kuru Niti. Okay.
Before Bhishma and Drona and all the rulers of the earth said, Partha, Arjuna, behold, these Kurus gathered together.
Okay, so just to put it together, Lord Krishna, having drawn up the chariot between the two armies, spoke these words, which were, behold, these Kurus gathered together. So, Lord Krishna is an obedient driver. He does what Arjuna says. He pulls the chariot forward between the two armies, exactly what Arjuna asked for. But he does a little more than what Arjuna asked for, right? Which was? What do you notice from this verse 25? It's not just senayor upayor madhye. It is a little more than that. What does it say? Bhishma and Drona, see? Before Bhishma and Drona, he says, so on and so forth. So he pulls the chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona. So, why does he do that? We talked about this before. Anybody remember?
Drona is the teacher.
Yeah, Drona is the teacher of military science and martial arts, and probably much more than that, because in those days, even no matter what they were your guru in many aspects. So he was really their moral guide and everything. So Krishna knows that Arjuna has a weakness for, an emotional attachment to certain people. If he, like we said, if he'd placed the chariot in front of Duryodhana and Karna, what would have happened? He would have exploded and said, I can't read. He would have just started shooting arrows. But then what progress is there for Arjuna? He's just trapped in his, anger, rajas bhav. So Krishna wants to free him. So the only way to do that is first expose the weakness. And we wouldn't have been able to study the Bhagavad Gita either. There wouldn't have been any Gita. Again, so Drona was the teacher, Bhishma was what they often translate in the scriptures, in English they translate as grandsire. So he's like a very royal grandfather to everybody, practically everybody in the whole story. So Arjuna loved him too, as well. So Krishna in the first chapter, he only speaks a few words, which are, behold these Kurus gathered together. That's all he says. He doesn't have to say anything. He just says 1, 2, 3, 5 words. Then from there, like a whole forest fire takes place for Arjuna. He's just showing him a weakness that he has. And a dramatic transformation takes place after that. But actually, I feel that everything that Amma does indirectly in our lives, she's just saying, behold. She puts you in a particular workplace, and then she says, behold. She makes you do seva with certain people. Behold. She puts you're born into a certain family. Behold. You get married to somebody. You have children. All your relatives, everybody, everything, your circumstances in life are all just Amma through these circumstances saying, don't you have something to look at a little more closely inside of you? So if you look outwards, you'll never really see anything. But when she says behold, she means inside, right? So Krishna, maybe what he really meant was not with the physical eye. Look with your inner eye at that attachment you have inside of you. But it didn't work right away for Arjuna. It took a little while. So let's see how he first reacted to Krishna's little trick. Tatra pashyat stithan partha pitrun atha pitamahan acharyan matulan bhratran putran pautran sakhim sthatha. And then we'll read one more verse. Maybe we'll read the two, we'll read all three. Shwashuran suhridaschaiva senayorubhayorapi tan samiksha sakaunteyaha sarvan bandhun avastithan kripaya paraya vishto vishidan abbravid. Arjuna uvacha drishtve mam swajanam Krishna yuyutsun samupastitam. Okay. Marla, 26, please. The bottom of page 38. Yes, verse 26, the bottom of page 38. Got it? 26. Got it? Okay.
The son of Prithaha, Arjuna, saw there before him uncles and grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, and grandsons, and many friends as well.
Okay. Pass the mic. Why don't you read those? Just keep it on. Yeah. Just you can read these two together. It's too tough to split it.
Then that son of Kunti, Arjuna, seeing all these kinsmen thus present, possessed by extreme compassion, spoke thus in grief. Seeing these my kinsmen, O Krishna, gathered, eager to fight. ...
Okay. Yeah, we're going to have to cut it somewhere. So we'll continue in a second. So until this moment, Arjuna was only thinking of killing Duryodhana and the other people there. But then when Krishna shows him the enemy army, he realizes that like almost all of his dear acquaintances and friends are gathered. Not just on his side, he knows who's in his army, right? But there are a lot of friends and relatives and dear acquaintances in the enemy's army. Usually, if you're fighting a war, it will be your clan will be on one side and the other clan will be on the other side. It'll be a clear division. It'll be like in America, World War II. I mean, you didn't even speak the language of the other person. And they looked different, right? Maybe they even had a different religion. It was very easy for them to fight these people because you can't talk with them. You can demonize them mentally. You can say they're evil or whatever. And then, they look different. Everything is different. And so they, mentally, psychologically, it's easy to rationalize such things. But just imagine if you knew virtually everybody in the enemy army too. It's a very challenging moment. So he realized that virtually everybody he knew was in mortal danger at that moment. At least all the men were. And on top of that, the Kaurava forces were very well equipped, and they were arranged and arrayed in a mighty strategic formation. So that would have been weighing on his mind. So he started to have second thoughts. And, it's sort of very symbolic. It's analogous to the situation that we face internally. We talked about how the Mahabharata war is an analogy for all the negativities within us, the Kaurava forces fighting the few handful of positive qualities that we have inside. So there's a tendency that we also have to kind of run away from those circumstances when your vasanas seem so powerful. So this is a symbol, what Arjuna is about to face is a symbol for that same circumstance that we face in our daily lives with our vasanas. We typically run away from it, but it doesn't solve the problem of actually becoming spiritually more stronger. So how bad was the suffering for Arjuna? Because we know he's about to have second thoughts, but how serious are his second thoughts and how severe is the sorrow that he is suffering from? Vyasa dramatizes it very nicely in the next couple of verses. So Arjuna says, seeing these my kinsmen, O Krishna, gathered eager to fight, then Sidanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishushati vepatuscha sharire me romaharshascha jayate gandivam sramsate hastad tvakchaiva paridahyate nacha shaknomyavastatum nacha shaknomyavastatum Brahmativa Chame Manaha. Okay.
My limbs fail, my mouth is parched, My body quivers and my hair stands on end.
That's a good line to read. All right, Ron.
Gandiva, the bow, slips from my hand, and even my skin burns all over. I am unable to stand, and my mind seems to whirl.
Okay. This is very good. Okay, thanks. So we should make one thing clear. You know, in verse 28, it says. Let's just go back to verse 28. It says, "Then that son of Kunti, Arjuna, seeing all these kinsmen thus present, possessed by extreme compassion, spoke thus in grief." Notice anything contradictory about that? What is that? That should tell us. A little red flag should go off in our mind.
It's a grief of fear.
Yeah. Why? What is strange about that line? What is it says? Possessed by extreme compassion, spoke thus in grief. What is strange about that?
His bow falls from his hand.
That's the next That's the next verse. Yeah, something's contradictory here. You have to pick that out.
Compassion and grief.
Yes, very good. Amma has lots of compassion. You ever seen compassion cause her grief? Compassion is compassion. It doesn't cause sorrow. Right? Compassion causes, like what Amma, she can identify with us. She can cry tears with us. It doesn't mean that she's miserable. She's sharing in our misery. But she's not part of it. She's not partaking in the misery. She's sharing that with us, that moment. She's commiserating or whatever. It's compassion. All you can say is it's compassion. So, since Arjuna's grief is the reality, because we can see, you don't have your hair stand on end and all these things without, actually having some emotional suffering going on. What does that tell you about the so-called compassion that is being referred to here?
Not rooted in the right.
Yes. It is not real. It's not the same compassion like Amma. Definitely we cannot say this is Amma's got compassion, Arjuna has compassion. These are two totally different things. We should never be confused there. So real compassion, like in Amma's case, it gives the strength to do the right thing, right? Like I told you guys on one of these days, one of my talks recently, that there was a time when Amma had a brace. I can't remember when I said it. She was having some wrist pain, right? So she was wearing a brace on her wrist. And of course somebody must have told her, Amma, you should wear this. And she was wearing it while she was giving darshan. Then she said, I want to remove this during darshan. And then we were like, why do you want to remove that? Please keep it on, it's for your sake. And then this is what she says. She says, when I hug them, they should feel the warmth of my hand touching them, not some steel bar and a wrist brace. Does that sound like Arjuna's compassion? She's willing to suffer for the sake of us to be able to feel the warmth of her hand. That's strength. Her limbs, her bow is not falling from her hand. She's not falling out of her seat. Her hair is not standing on end. She's not falling apart. She's gaining strength. So Amma's compassion never overwhelms her. See, he's overwhelmed by compassion, quote unquote compassion. If Amma's overwhelmed by it, it means there's no sign of anything other than compassion. Yeah.
Swamiji, is the translation in the Sanskrit the same word compassion?
Yeah, actually it uses kripa. Yeah, that's why. It is, a lot of commentators, point out that it's not real kripa. It's not real compassion. Kripaya paraya. It means what do they call it? Supreme compassion? Extreme compassion. anyhow, the symptoms don't, coincide with what we know about extreme compassion. Fortunately, we have a perfect embodiment of extreme compassion, so we know that there's something wrong here. So Amma's compassion always helps her, makes her do the right thing, gives her strength. It never overwhelms her. So usually that when you're overwhelmed by something, it comes from a weakness or from attachment. So that's a clue to us that it's coming from somewhere else in him, not from us.
So it's a failure of the commentator.
Maybe Sanjaya is the one who's narrating it. Yeah. So maybe he's.
That's Vyasa.
Yeah, Vyasa's putting words in Sanjaya's mouth. We don't know what it is actually. So, but the key word here is avishtaha. I think that's what it is. Where is that? Comes in the parayavishto, avishtaha. Means he was overwhelmed. So, if you're overwhelmed by something, that means it's disempowering you, right? Compassion is empowering, actually. So that's what we know from Amma. So in Arjuna's case, it has taken control of him. In Amma's case, it's under her control. She can choose to be compassionate, or she can choose to be disciplinarian. Sometimes misplaced compassion is the wrong thing, Compassion to somebody who needs to be disciplined, is not correct. So Amma knows when to be soft and compassionate and when to discipline. Sometimes if it's a dangerous egoistic tendency in us, she may have to draw a line and say, bad boy, bad girl, like that, go to your room, something like that, no dessert for you or whatever it is, like a mother would do to her children. And that's what we need at that time. So that's up to Amma. She can decide when to do it. It's under her control. That's the key point. It's under her control. So in Arjuna's case, it's not under his control. He has become a slave of that emotion. That's how we know something's wrong. And it is extremely strong. Paraya kripaya. So that means that the attachment is also extremely strong. You'll find that the strength of the attachment is directly proportionate to the strength of the breakdown that takes place afterwards as a result of that. So Arjuna he was angry before, now he's become like almost depressed. We're going to see it's going to get worse after this.
Bipolar.
Yeah, he's bipolar. Actually, all these symptoms he's talking about are symptoms, of like anxiety neurosis, basically. All these things that he's sweating and he's can't hold anything, he's can't stand and all. It's just like he needs a psychotherapist, I think. Yes?
I'm reading this Eknath the Swar.
Okay, Ishwaran, yeah.
And he doesn't use compassion. He says it was overcome by sorrow. Despairing and spoke these words.
Vishidannidam means sorrow, but kripaya, paraya, yeah, that word we cannot ignore. Yeah. So it's often, and then Shankaracharya has commented on it too, so we know that it's, most of the comment or the translators use some version of compassion. And then they make a point of also discrediting that word as well. So, for whatever reason, maybe it's to show us, actually I think it's beautiful because it gives us an opportunity to reflect on ourselves, and we'll do that in a moment. So Arjuna he's no longer the soldier that he was. In other words, he's no longer able to do his duty, his dharma. He has become helpless. So this is where we have to, we can juxtapose it against our lives, Let's say you're a mother, a father, or you're a spouse, or whatever. Sometimes you're not able to do your dharma in that role because you become overpowered by some attachment. That is a sign when you're not able to do your dharma properly, and you know when that is because you know what your dharma is. You've been doing it long enough, right? You know that something is wrong. So we're going to remember those three aspects of the disease of reincarnation, bhavaroga. We talked about it. I'm going to write it again. This is a explanation of samsara, or the the disease of reincarnation that is given by some of the commentators. It's nothing new. But remember, there was, the first word was attachment. That was raga. Let's see if that makes you remember what comes next. Raga is the first aspect of it, huh? Raga, dvesha, no, those are, raga, dvesha are one thing. Raga means dvesha also. Because it's like saying anger, huh? Shoka. Raga, it's a progression that we're getting at, right? So raga leads to shoka. Raga is attachment. And when there's attachment, there's always dvesha, there's always dislike and disdain for something. They're the same thing. Shoka means what? Shoka, sorrow, suffering, sorrow basically. So it's beautiful how they say, as soon as you've got attachment, you've guaranteed yourself shoka. It comes with the manufacturer's warranty, guaranteed sorrow. As soon as you buy one, get one free. You buy the attachment, you're going to get free sorrow. It's just a question of when. We don't know when it comes. It'll cash in. It's like a bond that it matures eventually, and you're guaranteed to get that back. Shoka, and then once you've got attachment and sorrow, and when this is really powerful attachment, it gives really powerful sorrow, and the combination of these two created Krodha. Krodha is actually, it's a good point. Raga dvesha, which is attachment and disdain or dislike, these are the deeper seeds of kama krodha, which is what you're referring to. Attachment and disdain or repulsion, these are the seeds of the superficial, like the surface symptoms, which are anger and desire. So shoka, sorrow, comes from raga, and it ends up, the two of these put together ends up in moha. Moha, which is inner turmoil. Inner turmoil, so much inner confusion that the typical outcome is that we lose our judgment, we lose our discernment, discrimination, and we make wrong choices. Sorry? Yeah, it basically destroys your intellect. But the thing is that as soon as the attachment gets strong, it overpowers the intellect. That's what's happening. So we're going to see what happens. It's really amazing how it happens. Then the intellect becomes a tool of the attachment. We're going to see that next week. But anyhow, so verse 26, 7, 8 show Arjuna's raga, and shoka is verse 29, 30, shows how he's sad. His sadness, his kind of anxiety complex is manifesting in those verses. Next, all the way into chapter 2, moha takes place. That's why in this state of moha, of complete delusion, he gives a lecture to his guru. So can you imagine? This is what happens. You got attachment, you've got suffering, sorrow, then you start lecturing to your guru. I mean, it should be the other way around, but it shows Krishna's wisdom because he just keeps quiet the whole time. The whole first chapter, he's like, very good point. Okay. Just listens the whole time. So Arjuna has not even realized his helplessness. So we have to wait for some time for him to realize that. So what's going on, why is he having this anxiety attack, basically? Because, like we said, he's got that raga, he's got that attachment, especially to Bhishma and Drona and some other people there in the enemy army. So now, because he's got Krishna on his side, he's got faith in Krishna, he's got faith in his own skill, I think he's pretty sure that they're going to win the war. Because if he were not confident they were going to win the war, what does he have to worry? He's just going to die. He doesn't have to worry about the other people. Why feel compassion for the other people when you're worried about yourself dying? No, it's not that. He's not worried about himself dying. He's worried about the other people dying. So he says, wait a second. We're going to kill all these people. We've got Krishna. We're not going to lose. They're all going to be dead. We're going to win. We're going to go home. and the house will be empty. There's no Bhishma, because when he was a little kid, he was playing on Bhishma's lap. Drona was holding his hand and he was learning archery. No Drona to share the victory with, no Bhishma. What is the point in doing this? So it's an imaginary loss. He hasn't even killed them yet, or they haven't even been killed yet. But just the thought of losing them is enough to create this anxiety attack in him. So it's really amazing, because it happens to us too. We don't develop that attachment at that moment, because his attachment to them was there from before, but suddenly it's the thought that you're going to lose something. What if I lose this? What if that's gone in my life? My God, what am I going to do? Then we have an anxiety. It's not even gone yet. So you don't realize you have that attachment until this panic strikes you. So some people complain about their jobs, Oh, my job is such a job. Oh, God, I don't want this job. My boss is such a bad guy, Then suddenly, let's say they announce in the company, restructuring. We're going to cut 25% of the employees. Then you start thinking, oh my God, what if I'm one of the 25%? What if I lose my job? Then suddenly there's a big panic attack. Oh, I have to go find another job, and this and that. So this is the job that we thought we weren't attached to. We were attached to it. We just didn't know it until we think about losing it. So this is the crazy thing about attachment. We don't know we have it, first of all. We don't know that it exists. And that's why it is such a diabolical thing, because we start off from a state of ignorance. If someone were to ask you your attachments, you could probably enumerate a few, right? Harmless ones that really don't cause us much problem. Like, say, I have an attachment to tea, or I have an attachment to, National Geographic, or something like that. A cute, attachment. But the really deep, dark, ugly ones, we're not going to announce to everybody, These are the ones that we ourselves don't even want to think about, right? So they're there, and we may not even be aware of them. So we don't do anything about them. Right? We may go on a diet, we may exercise, those kind of things. But what are we doing about the really deep, dark, and ugly attachments that we have that are the real source of suffering for us? We're not doing anything about them, most likely, because we're not aware. Yes? Okay. We're going to get there. So you're ignorant of those really tough ones, so you don't do anything about them. Then what happens when they do come out? It's like the crocodile locks its jaws on you. Then it's too late. Once that vasana comes out with the crocodile jaws, to get loose, to free yourself from that is very tough. Because all this time we haven't done anything about it. We haven't faced it. We haven't tried to transcend it. So more often than not, we're stuck. We become slaves. So when initially you don't know that it's there, you don't do anything. Once it rears its ugly head, it overpowers you, and you're not able to do anything. You're helpless. So that's why vasanas are very dangerous. It is said that, certain things you should not allow, even a little bit. One is fire, one is enemies, the other one is vasanas. We know to put out fires. If a burglar's in the house, you don't go to sleep at that time. You call the police. But vasanas, we have so many of them. And so Marla's point is very good. What do you do then? Well, like we said, behold, pasyaita. And when anything happens in your life, this is the red flag, yellow flag, showing you what all the vasanas we have. Anytime we lose our peace of mind, that is a clear indication that we have some vasana button that's being pushed. And Amma's pushing it, nobody else. So we have to remember that. So if we want to follow Amma's instructions, what we should do is some kind of daily practice we have to do that helps us overcome those vasanas. Now, we might think of that as daily archana, 108 names, all these things, that's good too, but let's say you're busy, you can't do it 1 or 2 days. The only thing you can do is take, like we just said, all the circumstances that happen, these are your sadhana for the day. Every challenge to your patience, to your humility, to your endurance, all these things, it's all Amma just giving you, orchestrating your sadhana for the day. If we can have that attitude, some kind of, you're making a self-sacrifice as your sadhana or ego sacrifice, then you're at least doing something to work on your vasanas that day. Another analogy that's used is disease. So certain diseases, the symptoms are very clear. But then you have diseases like cancer. You go in there thinking you've got a cough or something, and you say, I got the flu, I think. And they do some tests, and then they want to do some more tests, and then they say it's not a cough. And then if it's cancer, and you didn't know you had it, the people who catch it early are the ones who are really blessed. They have a lot of grace. Some people catch it at the 4th stage, and then it's too late. It's like that. So being vigilant always, that's why Amma talks about being vigilant and aware always. Any sign of a vasana that comes up, we have to be conscious of it. I'm not saying I'm doing it perfectly. I'm with everybody else. So we all have to be careful. So the other thing I wanted to point about, that point about kripaya paraya, it's a beautiful analogy, this word compassion, or pity we could say. Some people translate it as pity. And, Arjuna feeling pity for the Kauravas, people who've done all that, remember we said it earlier in the Mahabharata explanation we gave, the Kauravas were guilty of all of the 6 heinous crimes. I forget what they are, but anyhow, they're considered felonies in those days. Manusmriti even said, Manusmriti was the dharma law in those days. Maybe it was after that, but whatever smriti was in effect at that time, says that if you see these felons, atitayana, if you see them, you can kill them on sight with no questions. Even a Brahmin can kill them. Which means you're not supposed to kill anybody if you're a Brahmin. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they're a Brahmin also. If they're an Atitayan, you can kill them. You don't have to be the police officer or anything. No questions asked. So they're guilty of all 6 heinous felonies. And this is what they are, right? So he's feeling pity for them. That pity is like the pity we feel for all of these negativities inside of ourselves. This is my take on it, Because we pity our selfishness, we pity our jealousy, we pity our, impatience, all these things. Instead of uprooting them ruthlessly like Amma would tell us to do, we kind of baby them. We sort of nurture them and allow them, we give them a space, and we kind of baby them along. So we harbor a kind of pity towards our laziness, our vanity, and all of our repetitive bad habits. So we give them all quaint and angelic names, euphemisms, We call it pity, but actually it's a weakness. It's an indulgence, yeah, all of our indulgences. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes people who have come into a lot of money suddenly they become philanthropists. Why? Usually, let's say they never did any philanthropy, but suddenly they inherit a lot of money, or they sell their company, get hundreds of millions of dollars, and then suddenly become philanthropists. What does this tell us?
Nurturing their own ego.
Well, there's another reason possibly. Tax break. Suddenly just to get out of paying taxes, I think I'm going to become a philanthropist. Right? So we call it philanthropy. It's a nice euphemism for my greed to avoid paying taxes. How do you know whether it's real or not? You know if the person's been doing it their whole life, like Amma. From when she was a little girl, she's always being compassionate. Right? So it's not suddenly this thing she's trying to get attention and doing these things. No. Arjuna was a warrior the whole time. Never felt compassion for any of the demons, or he never said, oh, poor, this demon, that demon. He just, knocked them off easily. So this shows that it's a euphemistic term, or it's It's an angelic name for something else. And this word swajanam, also we have to be very mindful. It's in verse 23, I believe. Sorry, 20, what was it, 26? Swajanam. No, not 26. 27. Shwasuran, yeah. And Swajanam is where? Very last. Swajanam, Tvajanan Krishna. Yeah. So, Swa means what? Means self, right? Jana means birth. So people who are my common birth people. In other words, my people. So he's saying that these are my people. So the idea is that they can't be wrong. They're my people. They can't be evil. They can't be worthy of being killed. They're my people. So what is the underlying assumption behind this? Well, this is what Amma would say. What is the wrong reasoning there? Or what is this? What is the presupposition for such a thing? Yes?
If they're my people, they can't be at fault.
Right, and what is that? What's the underlying assumption behind that? That I'm right. Right? I can't be at fault. And because I can't be at fault, my people can't be at fault. I'm perfect, I'm good, I'm right. So anybody who's affiliated with me by osmosis gets that infallibility to them as well. We do this all the time, you know. Like we said, the example, the PTA, you know, you're a member of the PTA, one of the kids does some kind of vandalism. Okay, we got to punish them. We're going to, expel them from the school. Someone passes you a note and says, it's your cousin. It's your cousin who was the one that did the vandalism. Now what are you going to do? And you're about to take the vote. Just before the vote, you are going to say, yes, expel him. Then someone says, your cousin. What do you do? Which do you vote for? My cousin. He can't be wrong. Now we should be compassionate. That's a very fishy kind of compassion. So this is the clouded intellect, leads to wrong judgments, and Arjuna's attachment is clearly expressed in that swajana, that word that he's using. In the previous verse he said, Dhartarashtraha durbuddhehe. He called them the Dhritarashtra clan, the people associated with the evil-minded one. He gave them different names, epithets. Now he's calling them my people. So definitely something has happened to him, his state of mind. So, and his attachment, like we said, is expressed as the misery in his body and all these symptoms that we see. It's a kind of anxiety attack that's taking place. So Jnanadev always has beautiful things to add. He says here that it's amazing how Arjuna, who once conquered Lord Shiva on the battlefield, such a courageous guy, is just collapsed like a wet noodle. That's not what Jnanadev said, but he collapsed, right? He was overpowered. So it comes from his attachment, not real compassion. And the metaphor that Jnanadev gives is so beautiful. He says, a black bee, I don't know whether this is a bumblebee or what, but it's a black bee. It can pierce through even wood, but it cannot pierce through a delicate flower bud. What happens? Sometimes, let's say the flower bud, let's say the bud closes, the bee is inside, and it's full of water from the rain or something. He can pierce through wood, right? So he could pierce through the flower petals, but he doesn't. And he drowns inside of the flower. Why? Why would a bee do that? Can pierce the wood, but why can't he pierce a flower? Or why doesn't he pierce the flower? He's attached to the nectar inside the flower, so he doesn't think to pierce through that flower bud. His attachment prevents him from doing that. So it's a beautiful example. Jnanadev compares Arjuna with that bee. He's such a valiant warrior, but he can't pierce through his attachment here. And he's completely immobilized as a result. And the insinuation here is that he's at risk of drowning as well. So these difficult circumstances lay bare what lies beneath the surface of our mind. And that's what we're seeing. In Arjuna, it lays bare his attachment. In us, it exposes our attachment. But in Amma, like we said a moment ago, like the darshan is going fast, she's struggling with the number of people and the speed. Typically we would be like, get rid of these people. I can't do this. But Amma, it's what lies beneath the surface is something beautiful. Selflessness, sacrifice, wisdom. And it's those qualities that come to the surface when she is put under pressure. In our case, it's anger and all these other negative emotions that come up. So these difficult circumstances make us choose between dharma and what's comfortable for us. So up to verse 30, this raga and shoka are completely described. Now from the next verse onwards, we're going to see how it creates moha, or this inner turmoil for him, and total delusion. And then we can learn from Arjuna's delusion also. And we want to learn, how does he transcend his delusion? Because we want to transcend our delusion also. So that we're going to find out next week, not today. If you want to learn how to transcend your delusion, you have to wait until next week. Yeah. We have delusion today, but it'll be there next week also, unfortunately. We can always transcend it next week.
You promise it'll be done next week?
Yeah. No. We can learn about transcending it next week. So we can have a few questions before we meditate, if anybody has any questions. Yes.
How were Bhishma and Drona swayed to the dark side?
The dark side of the Force. Well, it's hard to say. Basically, allegiances like Karna, they had allegiances, they gave promises. There's always some kind of spiritual message there. A careless word spoken, a promise. In those days, promises meant something. You say that you'll do something and then you do it. Here are we just like, yeah, sure, yeah. Then you go home, no way, I'm not doing that. Our words don't mean anything today. But in those days, not even in those days, even just a couple hundred years ago, when people said something and they gave a promise, they would go to extreme lengths just to fulfill their promises. These days, a promise doesn't mean anything. So they gave promises, they had allegiances to people, they lived with them, they received favors from them, and for whatever reason, that overpowered their decision.
Karna was shown favor.
Karna was, yeah. But when you say Bhishma and Drona, it's hard to really explain it because they're supposed to be wise, but especially Bhishma. Drona, maybe he wasn't. We can't say that they were God realized. They wouldn't have been God realized, otherwise they definitely wouldn't have done that. So they have a degree of ignorance, even though they were great beings in other ways. Yes?
For Bhishma and Drona, they were supposed to obey their king.
Yeah. They had, it all boils down to being at a lower level of consciousness. Because dharma, yes, you have a dharma as you're a subject of your king. But if you say a more parama dharma, even higher dharma, is, like let's say we have allegiance to Obama, because he's our king, so to speak. And if he says, go fight against some God-realized being, we're not going to do it. Even if he's our king, we're still not going to do it.
Bhishma was the son of Devi, right?
Yes. Now, so Bhishma was a very, in one way he was an exalted being, but the thing is, no, that's Karna. Karna was the son.
No. Karna was Surya's son.
Surya, yeah. Ganga Devi. Ganga Devi, yeah, in a human form. In a human form, yes. Yeah. So the thing about Bhishma, it's hard to say about him, but there's one interpretation I've read, which is that maybe he did it on purpose to show that nobody's really invincible. because invincibility is a relative thing, and he was so famous for being invincible, for being, able to choose his time of death.
Yeah, and he has the bone and he lectures to everybody.
Yeah, but then in the end, what a lesson. Even somebody who has the boon of being able to choose when he's going to die, he's also basically mortal. Nobody can really escape mortality. Yeah, you had a question.
Didn't a lot of the devas and everybody incarnate to partake in Krishna's Leela? So,
In the war? Oh yeah, in the Leela throughout his life.
So, it's just a Leela.
Yeah, you can
So,
also say from the Vedantic standpoint, it's all a Leela, right? But I mean, for a sincere question, it kind of seems like escapism, We could say that for virtually every question that comes up. That's the ultimate, because then you could say like, well, why is there duality to begin with? And then we can always go to that level, and then it's true. It's a Leela. Any other questions? Answers? Yes.
In this, is Arjuna aware of who Krishna is at the beginning?
He's lived with him long enough that he should be, and there were enough things that happened in their lives that he shouldn't forget. But they've been together a long time, and it's like we've been together with Amma for far shorter period than Arjuna, because those days Amma says they used to live a lot longer. So I think if you look at the story, you can assume that Arjuna and Krishna were together for decades, I think, if I'm not mistaken, because somebody's like 80 years old on the battlefield or something. I looked at it once, and a contemporary of somebody else, and I think it's clearly a few decades they're together. And knowing each other, right, one way or another. Because he wasn't intimate necessarily in their life the whole time. So then you get to know somebody, you become an intimate friend. What do? You start to talk with them like a friend. Like we've known Amma for a long time too, but we start talking with her like a friend. You crack jokes, and you say things, that you wouldn't say to a God-realized being, But you're interacting with Amma like your mother, or your friend. So
she disarms us.
She disarms us, and we can just be 100% sure that Krishna would have done the same thing. They don't constantly wield that, absolute spiritual authority over us. They interact. Amma plays. I remember there's one example. I mean, people will have their own examples. But I remember we were going on the subway in Japan once. I told some of you that story. 1992. The car didn't show up, so we got on the subway. Amma got on the subway also, and we, she had to go through the turnstile. So I handed her a ticket, and she's like, "What do I do with this?" Okay, you put it there in the machine. And you were there too, Rohan. Put it in the machine, comes out the other side. She didn't even take the ticket. You're supposed to take the ticket, right? Because you got to put it in on the other side. She just walked, and I grabbed the ticket and said, "Amma, your ticket." She says, "I don't want it. You keep it, And then I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to try and lecture Amma on the importance of a train ticket, I'll keep it. But she's like a kid, She's being like a kid. There was another time, there was a coconut. She was kind of scraping at the coconut to, get the piece of the meat out of it. She was using some implement that wasn't working properly. And she handed it to me. You do it. It was like a little kid, I thought, this is so funny. She's playing the child, and she's making me like the parent, They can do that at any time. They can play any role that they want. So they make you feel like a friend, they make you feel like a relative or like a sibling, they make you feel like, Amma makes you feel like her father, her mother sometimes too, intentionally. So she brings up all those emotions in you, so I'm sure Krishna would have done it too. So it confounds that whole notion of this guru-disciple relationship. If you see Swamiji and Amma, sometimes Big Swami argues with Amma like anything. But it's not like out of ego. if you listen to the Malayalam, you're like, Amma, you should take rest. He's saying like, why don't you rest for a few hours and then go to this? And no, don't. It's just like he's arguing for Amma. Amma's arguing against herself, basically. There's no one to stand up for Amma because she won't stand up for herself. So somebody has to argue Amma's side of this, and she'll never accept it. So it's an exercise in futility. Everybody's exhausted in the end, and Amma obviously wins the argument. She's going to suffer. She's not going to sleep. She's not going to eat. She's not going to take rest. It's whatever. You can't do anything about it. So it's really peculiar. So Arjuna must have gone through those same things that we've all been through, and then here he is interacting with Krishna like he's just a friend. Somewhere he knew, but not aware of it all the time, definitely. And I know from our relationship with Amma, we constantly, it's like, why am I forgetting that she's, divine from birth? Why should I even try to educate? Sometimes she'll ask us a question. You should ask you a question, what is this? What is that?
And yet the whole point is pointing out Arjuna's state of delusion.
Yeah.
Which is our state of delusion.
Yeah. And so Amma very innocently asks you a question, and then we become on this, I'm going to educate Amma about such and so,
On Tuesdays, Amma asking spiritual questions.
Yeah.
Everybody's supposed to give an answer.
Yeah, and so everybody, I know the answer, But still, Amma, how many times has she asked a question about this and that? And then, your first reaction should be, why are you asking me that? You know the answer, you tell me, but it's very rarely does that response come. It's always like, this is an opportunity for me to have a conversation with Amma, and that's the only reason why she's doing it. She's giving us
Like to show off our intellect.
Yeah, if you're lucky, it's the joy over just having a conversation with Amma. If you're unlucky, most of the time, usually it's, okay, she's asking me about something I know about. So now I'm going to show her my knowledge. I'm telling somebody who's knows the whole secret of the universe.
That is a tender trap.
Yeah. And she knows how to bait the trap so well. She asks you the questions that you have so much pride in my knowledge of this and that. Yeah. Okay. Well, normally we would meditate now. Is there any burning questions? Are there anybody have any? Okay, good.
Meditate on that delusion.
Meditate on an illusion, yeah. Okay. So any other questions? We had some other things to talk about. We can talk about it next week. And we plunge deeper into Arjuna's delusion and vicariously into our own delusion. So I think in conclusion, what we'll do, this time we'll do Asatoma and Lokaha, and then after the meditation we'll make it a practice of doing Purnamada. We'll just standardize it like that. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti 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 Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So, as usual, those who have time constraints are welcome to excuse themselves. It is the time to do it. We have designated that as the official ending time, 9:30, and then remaining meditation is optional for those who have time. is getting late. So close your eyes. Keep your spine straight and your neck in line with your spine. Take a few long, deep breaths. Feeling your body and mind relaxing further and further. Try to feel a powerful spiritual presence here. Amma's subtle energy. Even Lord Krishna's subtle presence here with us. The two being one in a sense. Let's heighten our awareness even further by focusing on the breathing process. Be fully conscious as you breathe in and breathe out. Allow your awareness to flow gracefully with the breath. From the moment it enters through the nose, all the way down into the lungs, and also in the reverse order on the exhalation. Now let's dive even further, deeper within. To the inner recesses of of our own mind. Trying to penetrate to the core of our being. Beyond all the restless thoughts. In a place of stillness, we can make space for Amma to enter our heart. This is the first step. We have to make the space. We have to remove all the wrong notions. Invoking Amma's presence as our charioteer, our guide, means relinquishing the notion that we are in control of everything in our life. We can make a resolve. We want Amma to be our Krishna, holding the reins and driving the chariot of our life. We hand the reins to her. Also accepting the need for objectivity towards all our attachments, weaknesses. We can even pray to Amma. Oh Amma, I want you to show me all of the work I need to do. Use my life, all the circumstances, to show me where I need to focus spiritually. Expose all my weaknesses, but then be there for me. Give me strength to overcome them. If I plunge into delusion, don't abandon me, Amma. Make the light of your love shine in my heart so I can regain my composure and choose the right path. You're my guide, Amma. I have nobody but you. Don't abandon this child. Be with me always. Let's now close this meditation with peace prayer at the end. Purnamada. Take a deep breath. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnāād Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamādāya Purnameva Avashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. One more long deep breath. And as you exhale, slowly open your eyes. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for coming.